Hello and welcome. Welcome to another day of the festival. Welcome to another day of the State of the Artist Initiative Live Session program. Today we're talking about state of urgency. And if you follow us for the next 2 hours, you'll get to understand why we chose this title. But beforehand, I want to welcome you to the Ars Electronica Festival. This year, we are dedicating the whole festival program to the title Welcome to Planet B, A Different Life is Possible, But How? And this but how especially is the red thread running through the whole program. We are inviting you to take part in a thought experiment, assuming that we have already somehow mastered the crisis of our time. And we found ourselves in a situation where a society that is characterized not anymore by economic, but by more ecological and social sustainability. What would our lives look like? And especially, how would we live, and what kind of tools did we need? What steps, what pathways did we need in order to get there? What decisions would we have made, and how would we have arrived in this potential, hopefully somehow happening future? And of course, we are in an arts and a technology festival, so we are also looking at which technologies could have been the real game changer somehow at the end. And all of those questions we are exploring together with the more than 1,000 protagonists that are gathering here together with us in Linz. And this is actually the key word. We are again back to an on-site festival. We have invited our artists, the guests, the speakers, the activists, and the entrepreneurs to be with us in Linz. And for you who are joining online, well, I'm very sorry, but I hope one day we can meet physically here. We're talking today about a very special program, a program that came out of a personal need of some of our team members after the attack of the Ukraine by Russian forces. We needed to make a commitment, we needed to make a clear statement, and not just a written text on the website, but a project that we were able to develop over the course of the time. And we need to live in solidarity with the artists and cultural workers, and those ones that are either living under political threat or under physical one, depending on where they live. And this is one of the reasons that we decided to open that initiative, to open that call, not only to the Ukrainian artists and creatives, but actually to artists and creatives around the world that are not able to voice their opinions, that are living under threat of political oppression and aggression. Together with the Austrian Foreign Ministry, we have initiated this open call, this initiative, to address artists and to open them a stage on this year's festival, visibility, and of course a place to say what they want to say. And this is why today we will introduce you several artists from around the world, actually. Yesterday we focused more on the Ukrainian perspective together with Björn Geldhoff. Today we are focusing more on the international perspective. And with me, and I'm more than excited to also finally meet you, dear Marita Muukkonen. I'm sorry, that was very likely not right. You have been a great inspiration in this whole process. I only honestly recently came across the huge initiative, the huge program that you're running. It's called Artist at Risk. And Marita is the co-founder and co-director of not only Artists at Risk, but a whole consortium of different programs that are already for more than a decade actively supporting artists around the world that are living at risk, that need to flee the countries, that need active support in doing so. And besides that, you of course are a highly established and highly successful curator working with many art institutions around the world, doing exhibition and supporting artists and giving them visibility within those exhibitions. I would like now to hand over the word to you and especially hear from you a bit more about Artists at Risk, about the work that you do with your team, of course, together. Welcome.
Thanks a lot, Crystal, for warming, welcoming words. It was very inspiring for me as a co-founder of Artists at Risk. It's to be a jury member in a state of artists. And this is something concrete Ars Electronica did, which is very important because in order to have a planet B we need concrete actions. We just don't need kind of metaphoric and symbolic representation, which is often very typical in the field of visual arts and contemporary art. We also need that level, but we need a level of taking concrete action. And that's the reason it's basically Artists at Risk started officially back in 2013. I co-founded Artists at Risk together with Ivor Stodolski, who is not here today, but it's basically something we did together. It's an activist organization, it still is. It grew out of a concrete need of our peers, our colleagues, curators, artists, art critics. That time we worked mainly in the visual arts, to have a breather, to flee their countries for political reasons because they were threatened, they were prosecuted, some of them were tortured. We did back at that time research for a curatorial project in Northern Africa, and as you remember, there was a big wave of uprisings. It's, as we know in the West, we call it Arab Spring, and we worked especially with the leading figures of Egyptian revolution, and they simply had to get out. It's basically, there was a big backlash, and actually at that time we started to research that is there some kind of mechanism that is there some kind of a human rights organization also working with artists at risk? We know that PEN International has done an amazing job working with writers and journalists for more than 100 years. But at that time, there was no institution or no organization dedicated to artists at risk. And as we know that nowadays, it's dissidents of today. They don't necessarily, they are not necessarily writers or poets. They are filmmakers, they are musicians, they come from theater, they come from visual arts, and basically we came up with a very simple idea. At that time we worked with an artist in residency organization in Helsinki. Our legal base is still in Finland, but we have actually nowadays more than 500 hosting organizations around the world. That we host artists, our peers, our colleagues, in artists in residencies, in art institutions, in activist organizations. The main thing that there's an engagement, and when a colleague, peer arrives, they arrive as artists, they arrive as professional artists. That's very important for us. We don't talk about refugees, we don't talk about refugee art. Often it's dissident artists are very strong artists, and therefore governments fear them. Therefore, governments prosecute them. And therefore, I feel as a curator coming from visual arts that I'm extremely privileged to work with all of these amazing artists. It's basically we are hosting around the world. And we will hear some of those voices today. And I feel very honored to have these artists who will join us today. And it's most important to hear their voices because they are the ones who are on the front line. They are the ones who are there risking their lives as we speak around the world. It is basically fighting its political regimes, their governments, to have its basic human rights, basic human democratic values. So those are the people we need to support concretely, and we need alliances within the art world to actually give space, support more, both artists at risk, and nowadays we also work with ecologists at risk. I mention it because that's the topic, Planet P, in Ars Electronica. So we have slowly started to host its cultural workers and artists who are ecological activists. And for example, if we look at Latin America nowadays, there are more ecological defenders killed on daily and weekly basis than journalists. So the murder rates are really high, so we need support mechanisms for those who are frontline defenders also defending this planet we are talking about. And as we heard yesterday from some of the winners from Ukraine, that of course ecological disasters coming with wars. Those are also part of the strategies of aggressors.
Absolutely.
It's totally. So that comes together. I just briefly mentioned before we move on, you see the front page of Artists at Risk, and it's mainly shown there because we have very simple forms to fill in, both for artists at risk who need a breather, who need to get out, and also to become a hosting organization. So basically you can apply to become a host for artists at risk. It's a very simple, concrete way to engage. Residencies are anything from 3 months to 24 months. And Artists at Risk also has emergency funding for living grants. We hope that hosts can contribute and provide the living and staff costs, but we can also provide living grants for the artist. And lastly, just to show the wave of solidarity, what happened in Europe after the war in Ukraine. We have never witnessed that in Artists at Risk. Basically, before artists from Ukraine started to approach us, hosting institutions started to host us and ask, what can we do? And basically, we had 39 hosting institutions in Artists at Risk before war in Ukraine. Now we have more than 500. And we want that this solidarity stays, and that's what we are talking about today. It's not only our peers and colleagues in Ukraine who need protection, who need support. It's artists from everywhere. We are going to talk today about situation in Myanmar, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Hong Kong, and Uganda, Kenya, and so on. So we really hope that this wave of solidarity is going to stay, both for Ukrainians, because the war doesn't seem to be over, and for others, that it's not another art world trend, because we need real engagement on long-term basis, and that's what we keep on repeating. We need the same support for our colleagues from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Uganda, from Myanmar, from Hong Kong, and so on.
I think this is the perfect moment to now look at a very exciting project that actually was made a couple of years ago by a filmmaker from Norway, Karl Inga Royce, and he, the protagonists of the films are the Peacock Generation, and we have a representative of the Peacock group today with us. But let's have a sneak peek into the film.
One, 2, 3, 4. Chowna, hey, chowna, chowna.
Chowna, hey, chowna, chowna.
Chowna, hey, chowna, chowna.
Chowna, hey, chowna, chowna.
Hey, chowna, she.
Hey, sit down, she.
Hey, sit down, she.
Hey, chowna, she.
Hey, chowna, she.
Hey, sit down, she.
Chowna, thin it.
You know, keep your label.
Keep your lane, man.
Send him a pound, keep my thin.
Send him a pound, keep my thin.
You know, keep your label.
Keep your lane.
Send him a pound, keep my thin.
Keep your
ပညာရေးဟာတစ်ကြောင်းကြောင်းပညာရေးဟာတစ်ကြောင်းကြောင်း
စနစ်တစနစ်ဟောခစ်တစ်ခစ်ကြောင်း
ပညာရေးဟာတစ်ကြောင်းကြောင်းပညာရေးဟာတစ်ကြောင်းကြောင်း
ပညာရေးကိုအမြင့်ဖြတ်ကုမယ်
စေမီလုံးနဲ့မကူဘူးဟဲ့
သိလီတို့နဲ့မကူဘူးဟဲ့
ပညာရေးကိုမြင့်ဖြတ်ကူမယ်
ပညာရေးကိုမြင့်ဖြတ်ကုမယ်
စေမီလုံးနဲ့မကူဘူးဟဲ့
ပညာရေးတွေဝေဝါးနေတယ်
တို့လူငယ်တွေတို့လူငယ်တွေ
တို့လူငယ်တွေတို့လူငယ်တွေ
ပညာရေးတော့ဝေဝါးနေတယ်
ဒီတောင်းမြစ်တွေအဖြတ်ခံရတယ်
ဉာဏ်ပညာတွေဖြတ်ခံရတယ်
ဉာဏ်ပညာတွေအဖြတ်ခံရတယ်
ရေတောင်းမြစ်တွေဖြတ်ခံရလို့
ဉာဏ်ပညာရဲ့အရှိတ်ဘက်မှာ
အိုယိုနီတွေပိမ့်ပိမ့်နေတယ်အိုယိုနီတွေပိမ့်ပိမ့်နေတယ်
ဉာဏ်ပညာရဲ့အရှိတ်ဘက်မှာ
အိုယိုနီတွေပိမ့်ပိမ့်နေတယ်အိုယိုနီတွေပိမ့်ပိမ့်နေတယ်
ဘာတွေဘလို့ကြက်
ဉာဏ်ပညာကိုမပြတ်ဖို့နဲ့စဉ်းစားမပြတ်ဖို့လိုတယ်
ဘာတွေဘလို့ကြက်
ဉာဏ်ပညာကိုမပြတ်ဖို့နဲ့စဉ်းစားမပြတ်ဖို့လိုတယ်
ဘာတွေဘလို့ကြက်
ဉာဏ်ပညာကိုမပြတ်ဖို့နဲ့စဉ်းစားမပြတ်ဖို့လိုတယ်
ကျွန်တော်တို့အတွေ့တွေပိတ်အောင်လေးလေး
ပညာရေးကပိတ်မောင်လေးလေး
ပညာရေးကသိမ့်အောင်လေးလေး
ကျွန်တော်တို့တွေပိတ်တောင်လေးလေး
ကျွန်တော်တို့အတွေ့တွေသိမ့်ခေါင်လေးလေး
ပညာရေးကသိကြောင်လေးလေး
ကျွန်တော်တို့မလင်းရင်နေပါစေ
ပညာမောင်မှာကြောက်ပါတယ်ပညာမောင်မှာကြောက်ပါတယ်
စိတ်အတောက်ပညာရေး
တပိတ်မောက်ပညာရေးတပိတ်မောက်ပညာရေး
စိတ်အတောက်ပညာရေး
တပိတ်မောက်ပညာရေးတပိတ်မောက်ပညာရေး
ကျောင်းသားဆိုတာပုံလူငယ်ဆိုတာပုံကျောင်းသားဆိုတာပုံလူငယ်ဆိုတာစနစ်မကောင်းရင်
ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်
ကျောင်းသားဆိုတာပုံလူငယ်ဆိုတာကျောင်းသားဆိုတာပုံလူငယ်ဆိုတာစနစ်မကောင်းရင်
ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်ပြီးရင်ကြမယ်
တောင်းကန်းတွေကိုချန်ရစ်ခဲ့ပြီ
စာသင်ခန်းတွေထားရစ်ခဲ့ပြီ
စာသင်ခန်းတွေထားရစ်ခဲ့ပြီ
ကျောင်းခန်းတွေကိုခြံရစ်ခဲ့ပြီ
ခမောက်တစ်လုံးပုံပုံဒီတစ်ခက်ပုံပုံဖက်နဲ့တရံပုံပုံတောင်းလာနဲ့ပုံပုံခမောက်တစ်လုံးပုံပုံဒီတစ်ခက်ပုံပုံဖက်နဲ့တရံပုံပုံတောင်းလာနဲ့ပုံပုံကျောင်းသားတွေချစ်တက်လာပြီ
တို့ကျောင်းသားတွေချီတက်လာပြီတို့ကျောင်းသားတွေချီတက်လာပြီ
တို့ကျောင်းသားတွေချစ်တက်လာပြီ
တို့ကျောင်းသားတွေချီတက်လာပြီတို့ကျောင်းသားတွေချီတက်လာပြီ
တင်းတင်းရှာရှာနေပူထဲမှာ
ခွတ်တောင်းကြီးတွေပြန်တန်းလာပြီခွတ်တောင်းကြီးတွေပြန်တန်းလာပြီ
တင်းတင်းရှာရှာနေပူထဲမှာ
ခွတ်တောင်းကြီးတွေပြန်တန်းလာပြီခွတ်တောင်းကြီးတွေပြန်တန်းလာပြီ
ကောင်းနေခြင်းနဲ့ပညာရေး
ပြောင်းနေခြင်းနဲ့ပညာရေးပြောင်းနေခြင်းနဲ့ပညာရေး
ကောင်းနေခြင်းနဲ့ပညာရေး
ပြောင်းနေခြင်းနဲ့ပညာရေးပြောင်းနေခြင်းနဲ့ပညာရေး
အမောင်ခေရဲ့စနစ်ဆုံးမှာ
ချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူးချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူး
အမောင်ခေရဲ့စနစ်ဆုံးမှာ
ချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူးချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူး
တရားခေမှာလူပြစ်ခဲ့ရဟန္တာဖြစ်အောင်ကြိုးစားပါ
အမောင်ပြမှာလူဖြစ်ခဲ့ရင်အာနာရှင်ကိုပြီးဆန်းတယ်အာနာရှင်ကိုပြီးဆန်းတယ်
တရားခေမှာလူပြစ်ခဲ့ရဟန္တာဖြစ်အောင်ကြိုးစားပါ
အမောင်ပြမှာလူဖြစ်ခဲ့ရင်အာနာရှင်ကိုပြီးဆန်းတယ်အာနာရှင်ကိုပြီးဆန်းတယ်
အမောင်ခေရဲ့စနစ်ဆုံးမှာ
ချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူးချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူး
အမောင်ခေရဲ့စနစ်ဆုံးမှာ
ချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူးချိန်မာကိုလည်းမကြောက်ကြဘူး
ဝေလဲမွေးတယ်ကျွေလဲမွေးတယ်
ဘာလို့
ဝေလဲမွေးတယ်ကျွေလဲမွေးတယ်
ခရီးပွင့်လို့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေခရီးပွင့်လို့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေ
ဝေလဲမွေးတယ်ကျွေလဲမွေးတယ်
ဘာမတီးတဲ့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေဘာမတီးတဲ့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေ
ဘောင်းတော်ကြားတွေကြားသိနိုင်ဖို့
ဘာမတီးတဲ့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေချီတက်ခဲ့ပြီချီတက်ခဲ့ပြီ
ဘောင်းတော်ကြားတွေကြားသိနိုင်ဖို့
ဘာမတီးတဲ့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေချီတက်ခဲ့ပြီချီတက်ခဲ့ပြီ
လမ်းတွေလျှောက်မှာလမ်းတွေလျှောက်တာ
နွမ်းနေပေမဲ့ပညာရေးအတွက်နွမ်းနေပေမဲ့ပညာရေးအတွက်
လမ်းတွေလျှောက်မှာလမ်းတွေလျှောက်တာ
နွမ်းနေပေမဲ့ပညာရေးအတွက်နွမ်းနေပေမဲ့ပညာရေးအတွက်
ဆိုင်းရမပြေခင်မှန်းရပြေဖို့
လမ်းတကာပြေချီတက်လာပြီလမ်းတကာပြေချီတက်လာပြီ
ဆိုင်းရပြေခင်မှန်းရပြေဖို့
လမ်းတကာပြေချီတက်လာပြီလမ်းတကာပြေချီတက်လာပြီ
တပိုကြရင်တပိုတက်
ကျွေချင်းကိုကပွင့်ချင်းပါပဲကျွေချင်းကိုကပွင့်ချင်းပါပဲ
တပိုကြရင်တပိုတက်
ကျွေချင်းကိုကပွင့်ချင်းပါပဲကျွေချင်းကိုကပွင့်ချင်းပါပဲ
ကျွေပေမဲ့လည်းမွေးနေသေးပါ
ခရီးပွင့်လို့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေခရီးပွင့်လို့ကျောင်းတော်သား
ကျွေ
တွေ
ပေမဲ့လည်းမွေးနေသေးပါ
ခရီးပွင့်လို့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေခရီးပွင့်လို့ကျောင်းတော်သားတွေ
လက်ပြန်တွေကငါတို့နာခဲ့
ပညာရေးဟာငါတို့နာခဲ့
ပညာရေးကငါတို့နာခဲ့
မနက်ဖြန်ဟာငါတို့နာခဲ့
ကြောက်တို့သိလျှောက်ငါတို့လျှောက်မဲ့လမ်းများလေ
ကျောင်းဆက်လျှောက်ရဲလျှောက်ငါတို့နောက်မှာတန်း50
ကြောက်တို့သိတော့ငါတို့လျှောက်မဲ့လမ်းများလေ
လျှောက်ဆက်လျှောက်ရဲတောက်ငါတို့နောက်မှာတန်း50
So first of all, it's Kar Ingal and also Han Hatu. I'm really honored to have this discussion with you and congratulations on the prize. Han Hatu, you were one of the leading members of the student union in Myanmar, and you are also was one of the founding members of Peacock Generation, and you are performing in this video. It's this Kar Ingal made in 2015. Can you tell us shortly what are you performing in this video? It's in 2015.
Hello. Right. The performance that we've just seen is called Tanjet. It is a traditional satirical rapping performance in Myanmar, and it is usually performed at Myanmar New Year's time in April. And in Myanmar New Year's time, we have water festival like Songkram in Thailand, and it symbolizes cleaning the sins and darts from the last year, not to carry anymore into the upcoming years. And this performance Tanjet is remembered together with that symbolism. We mock the establishment, either religion or the government, and we pointed out the flaws and imperfections in a satirical and mocking fashion. And as you can see, we were talking about the education system. At that time around, there were talks about the reforms on the national education law. And we student unions were also one of the stakeholders, and we appeal to the public with this performance, what is wrong with the system and how bad it is need to be reformed. So that was a point of our Tanjat performance, and the members were all student union members in Myanmar. For those who are not familiar with Myanmar political systems, the student unions were always at the forefront of every political mobilizations since pre-independence times.
Carl Ingar, can you tell us that what was your motivation for making this video in 2015 and how you came across Rin Hanhatu and the Peacock Generation?
Yes, I'm an artist and filmmaker, and I've always been interested in the intersection between art and politics, and also how artists use culture to try to change civil society. And I was working in Myanmar with a group of artists which has been imprisoned, and the way they were trying to resist the junta by collecting garbage and making art. And then I heard about the Tangyat group and the students' influence on the changes in the countries, and then I was really happy to meet Hantu and work with you.
Can you tell us basically that what is the symbolism? It's Peacock carries. It's for Burmese activists and in Myanmar that it's basically you are co-founder of Peacock Generation.
Right. The Peacock Generations, it comes from the names, the symbol of the student unions, which is a fighting peacock. It is dated back to the colonial times, where the student unions, which were first formed in Myanmar in the only 2 universities which were in existence back in the time, and those student unions, they symbolize themselves with the peacock, which was the emblem of Burmese kings. But back in the Burmese kingdom days, the peacock was dancing with his full all spreaded. But they decided now it is time not to dance, but to fight. And it became a fighting peacock. And with that movement, they call English colonial officers, they stopped calling them lords, and the names, they just put masters and lords in front of their names. Like I'm Hantu, and I'll be called the King Hantu. So the tradition was carried along the fight against colonial power and the military dictatorship throughout all these decades until now. And until now, the student unions, they have a flag of fighting peacock, and the opposition party, their flag is a fighting peacock with a star in honoring those student unions.
There has been a drastic political change in Myanmar since 2015 when you met and worked on this video with Carl Ingar, and the military junta took over a year and a half ago. It's basically, and you also told me that it's now one of the members of Peacock Generation was arrested in December. Right. Can you just tell us briefly that what is the situation of the Peacock Generation members? It's basically, and also what has happened. It's since the military junta is in power again.
Right. Sure. To give you a very brief background, last year in February 2021, the military staged a coup d'etat against the elected parliament, democratically elected parliament, and since then they tried to get hold of the power, and many people joined the resistance movement, and so is our performance group, Peacock Generations. And the guys you just have seen in the video, they are now spread it across all the country, and 4 of them are in the resistance, bearing arms to fight the military back, and 2 are moving from village to take care of the internally displaced persons and to do campaigns for donations to provide essentials to these conflict-affected areas. And 2 are still hiding in Yangon, and one has been arrested in Yangon, and it was in December last year, just 2 days before he planned to propose his girlfriend.
So we see here it's basically that it's kind of how it's basically the performances are still going on, but now in jungle, and basically artistic strategies are used in resistance, and they are also leading its oppositional figures who were rappers, who were musicians, and who later on came leading oppositional politicians, and one of them, Tsayartan, was executed at the end of July with court Jimmy, and basically I think we all in Western world are very shocked. It's about these rapid developments and how you see the situation, also executions coming back and what is happening there, that what are the possibilities for opposition to struggle, and basically how this resistance and opposition could be supported in different levels. We are now in Ars Electronica in the art context, but basically if we think about concrete actions, what kind of support, what can people do concretely to support the resistance, to support the opposition in Myanmar in this situation?
Yes, there are many different ways that the people, especially in the democratic countries, in the free world, can extend their assistance to the people of Myanmar. Like you said, 4 people were executed in July, and one of them was a former NP. He was also a rapper. He was put to jail in 2007 for his rap songs that he criticized the junta and its administration. And the other one, Jimmy, was like a patron to our group, the Peacock Generations. We all call him Dad. It is a pretty heartbreaking moment for all of us. When he was executed, he was hung in insane prison in Yangon. So talking about the ways that the people internationally can support to Myanmar, when it comes to artists, there are hundreds of artists who have joined the civil disobedience movement, especially in the University of Art and Culture. They joined the civil disobedience movement and they stopped going to the university, they stopped working with the government, and as a consequence, they all lost their jobs and livelihood. And most of them are breadwinners for the families in such a poor country. And now hundreds of thousands of families are in poverty, also at risk of arrest constantly. And you can just search on Google how to donate civil disobedience movement in Myanmar, and also you can donate to the internally displaced people in Myanmar who has fled their villages and towns, their homes, as a consequence of carpet bombings by the military fighter jets. And last but not least, people can also support in diplomatic ways. In next Tuesday, the United Nations General Assembly is convening for its yearly session, and there will be 2 groups of delegations from Myanmar competing for credentials at the General Assembly, one from the junta and one from the opposition, which enjoys mandates and legitimacy from huge majority of the people. And you can Google about that, and you can make posts about that on the social media to raise awareness. You can write to your representative to pressure them, to make them supportive of the delegation of the people, the real delegation, which is still representing Myanmar at the General Assemblies. These are just among so many ways that people can support.
Kar Ingar, that we are talking here about, it's Peacock Generation, and Hantu is here with us because you made the film at the time. And what is your position as an artist? Because we are also here in Ars Electronica, its context, that how you can support it, how do you see as an artist that how you can support this is resistance movements and engage politically? What is your personal position or take on this as an artist?
Well, I think as an artist you have the opportunity to create platforms, like in Ars Electronica today, where I made the film several years ago, and today it's been discussed because sadly it's still the same situation, or the situation is much worse. So I feel the artist has an obligation, and it's also very interesting to work with these issues and see if art has any influence to change society. And I worked also on an academic level in Myanmar, trying to research and talk to people if they think art has any influence. And it seems to me that art has a very kind of gathering function in places of conflict, because you kind of need a kind of common identity to focus on when you go on, compared maybe to the freer world where art is more looked upon as something abstract.
Hantu, you are now, it's yourself, you are based in Berlin, you had to flee Myanmar, you are kind of a dissident in Europe at the moment. That how do you see the future of Myanmar? That is basically, that what are the chances for opposition to keep on resisting and junta and possibly take over?
Right. It is $1 million question. To be honest, there's an impasse between the junta and the opposition forces, but the junta is on the decline gradually. Like Francis Fukuyama said, the military, most of them, they do not collapse gradually, they collapse at one time dramatically. And we're waiting for that moment. And at this moment, the opposition is waging a war, people resistance war against the junta with conventional weapons they can get hold of. And the government, international community, they are supportive of the opposition government, which is the national unity government, but at the same time they are a bit reluctant to support the opposition movement formally, to recognize them as the legitimate government of Myanmar. Instead, they are hiding behind the agenda of 5-point consensus by the ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian countries, nations. And so this is not a way out of the current conflict, but it is just perpetuating the impasse at the moment. So I call on the international community from here to support in any ways they can, be it people, be it the government, be it the international organizations, to support our cause with in any means they can support.
And I think in this, just to wrap it up, art context is important to remember and repeat, as you said, that there are professors, there are artists who have lost their jobs in Myanmar and so on. They need support, they need resources. Some of them, it's like you need safe places to escape and so on. And it's always important to support those people who remain and also who resist, but they also need support as artists, and their works needs to be shown. That's really crucial, and that's something they need visibility for their cause and basically for their artistic practice as well. So thanks a lot. I mean, it was a short time to cover. It's everything what is to be discussed, but thanks a lot for your insight, Isana too, and Kar Ingar, for this is very strong film, which remains very relevant. It's today.
Thank you so much for being here, and again to the audience here on site. Take the time to talk to those two wonderful artists and hear more about their stories and their communities behind those stories. Thank you so much. We'll stay within the Asian context, but we move to another very urgent burning fire in Hong Kong. In the last month, it has been quieter around the situation ever since the new law was implemented. And we today have two representatives of, again, a group, a huge group that is calling themselves Floating Project Collective. They are based in Hong Kong, and they are collecting stories around resistance. And we'll have now a short insight into what they do.
Tonight is our third night in Auri, a 1,281 hectare forest in Mumbai that has experienced deforestation by a new metro line and metro carriage depot. In April 2017, around 300 tribals were displaced and evicted from their tribal hamlets known as paddas. Following the deforestation of 33 hectares with 3,000 trees, I think about what Donna Haraway encourages us to do. Collaborate with all Terrans that inhabit this earth, everything living. Urban development and such infrastructure projects are a new form of colonization, creating the irony where the once colonized becomes the new colonizer. Solidarity with Auri and the courage to go beyond. Michael Leung, 18th May 2018, Auri Forest.
天豪話以前個個都嚟同佢影相，幾廿年都企同一個位。
Thank you so much for this insight. Maybe some of the audiences from Asiktronica remember that just 2 years ago, we've awarded the Golden Nika in the Prix Asiktronica category, Digital Communities, to this anonymous group, to the Hong Kongers actually. Two of the figures that appeared on our stage here at that time were Eric Siu and Joel Kwong, who, as far as I know at least, are no longer living in Hong Kong by now. But the interesting connection is that Eric Siu is actually one of the students of the initiator, Linda Lai, who is now also leading, or is at least part of this project, and who today is with us. We can already see her on the screen, and I hand over to you for an introduction.
Thanks a lot. It's great to have you here with us, Linda Lai and Michael Leung. Thanks a lot, basically, for joining us online from Hong Kong. As Crystal mentioned, that Linda Lai, is an artist and also associate professor in the School of Creative Media in Hong Kong. And Michael is actually a PhD student. It's basically in the same school. And he's an artist and a designer. And he's also a commons activist. And he works with urban agricultural project as well. And Michael is a member of Floating Projects Collective. Welcome, Linda and Michael.
Hello.
It's great to have you with us here today. Yes. Could you, Linda, start by telling us about Floating Projects Collective, which was already founded first in 2010? That if you could tell us about motivations and reasons why you started Floating Projects Collective, and how was it working in 2010, and how is it working now, because it was also reinvented somehow in 2015, right?
Right. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Marita, for the introduction. Yes, I think the story should better start with 2015, when I reinvented a 5-year-old collective called the Floating Projects. at a moment when I suddenly feel that there's a strong urgency for people and young people to get together physically. It also coincided with a moment when the situation in real estate in Hong Kong allowed us to have cheaper rent to occupy a place. So this is actually the Chinese translation of floating projects, which means occupied points or occupied positions. So from the very beginning, we were very open about what we could do. There were lots of dreams. At one point, the main model was to be a charity cafe where we get together and read and write and show works. But very soon, land government lease requirements did not make that happen. And so we keep improvising. In the first 3 years, we were very much about encouraging everyone to start to do their first solo show before they got mature enough to be picked up by curators. So we did that, and with a lot of heavy critique for one another, we also improvised and invented some performance slash installation art forms, mainly centering around how to create with objects with a very strong environmental emphasis around that. So we did several things, and then many of us are actually very much into digital media, and quite a few of us in moving image practices other than photography and coding and other works. So very soon and naturally, for us, taking advantage of the platform available to us, showing moving image became a major event. But not to just show it, but also ask the question, what should we be doing to innovate moving image practices in a time when everyone is turning moving image practice into a site of contestation. And so in our second phase, which started 2018, we moved to a much smaller place. We also reinvented our economic arrangement. Members are paying the rent together in order to move into a different phase of experiment. So we understand what it means to struggle to support a space. So Digital Nomads, the project that is being shared here, thanks to Ars Electronica, is in fact something out of real contingency after 2019. So suddenly there was a little bit of a grant available. We took advantage and thought, can we take advantage of this to gather more and more young people who can collaborate? Some of them will be paid in order to build the online platform. Some would be more about working on the jury system. Some are using our network to spread the word around the world. So as a result, we know that this project now is actually rather international. Yeah. And this project for sure is about more communication and articulation. Like answering a simple question is, what do you have to say if you have the medium and the tool to speak? So alongside, we also thought we should take care of artists who are more conceptually developing and experimenting with moving image. And so we also have this kind of book like this one, which was published last year, a collection of video manifestos from almost 50 young artists. And also with the book, we also have a kind of we have the works really collected as part of the book. So maybe I can stop here. This is where we are. We are doing multiple things in order to advance the idea of how to keep up with how to keep open the space to speak. And while the space to speak could be narrowing down, maybe our focus is to cultivate a richer language of art, which is what we can do.
Just one quick, can you quickly say the name of the book again? Because
You give me the go?
Sorry. Can you quickly say the name of the book again, because the image was blurry? Okay. maybe you can do.
Okay. So as Crystal asked about the name of the book, because we didn't see it, and I think it's also as a PDF.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's basically because it has 49 essays, right, by young artists. So if you want to read them, it's good to know the name.
Sorry, I think something is going on my computer.
Going on, right?
I need to close something. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry for the noise that I
Yeah.
don't know where it came from.
No worries.
This is the second volume of our video manifesto project, and it is called Our Manifestos Part 2, Videography Documentary Impulses. So the first volume explore time and space, which is more aesthetic concerns that we work around. And this one is very much about how to mobilize all kinds of means to record experiences. And this is the emphasis on experiences is very much related to the last point I made, which is to say that the project to cultivate a richer language of art must also go alongside with understanding what it is we must talk about, and thus the topics, how to move away from a grand theme discussion to look into experiences and the experience of experiences together. Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael, you joined its floating project collective. It's a year ago, and we saw one of your video essays at the beginning. And basically, could you tell us? It's basically why you joined the floating project collective, and you have worked. It's for example with the land rights movement and new territories in Hong Kong. The group is cross-disciplinary, so. Could you tell us your perspective to the floating project, that it's basically, what is your motivation to be in this group and what are you working on?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I joined roughly about a year ago, and it was after a kind invitation by Linda, firstly to do an exhibition of my writing, my zines, publications and videos, etc. So in some ways it expanded outside of the zine format. And after that exhibition, which was scheduled for 1 month and then kindly extended for another half month, Linda then asked me if I'd be interested in joining the collective. And yeah, for myself, I rarely work by myself. I like working with others from different disciplines, such as farmers or neighbors. Yeah, I've been part of different collective projects, and the people who are part of floating projects and have been added at the same time as me, they're all from different disciplines, such as new media. Some are extremely skilled as being technicians with coding, making robots, etc. And yeah, I think just like this opportunity of being and sharing the same space with other people, and just seeing how we can, I guess, mutually affect each other, and how we can, yeah, kind of support the space, and then just kind of small moments of interaction that I've had in the past year, yeah, have been really nourishing for me, especially, yeah, after acknowledging like the current situation that you shared in your introduction.
It's basically, it's kind of interesting that it's floating project is collective has been searching and looking for new artistic strategies in the current political situation in Hong Kong, as we know that it is the possibilities in public space and narrowing down and so on. What do you think, it's Linda, that what kind of politics of art is possible in current situation, and what is your strategy? Because it seems that you have gathered it's hundreds of young artists to a community to work together, which is amazing, offering this context.
I think my general strategy is always to, well, after some principles of participatory art, I I think I look at myself as an artist as well as producer. So I set up a basic platform based on conceptual and theoretical concerns that I have. And then I want to leave the project open. So it's very much after an open project principle, with the spirit that the best thing to encourage free expression and also free experimentation is to set up just a few, starting points and see how people respond. Because I don't actually believe in preaching things that I believe in, but I think I should turn what I believe in into a process. And so people would come, and so I also learn from them. As far as politics is concerned, I think the politics of art is always part of art making, at least for me, and I'm sure with Michael too, except that at different points in history, such politics should be played out very differently. I think by that, I mean that art is always part of the other components in society, politics, economics, etc. And art should always maintain whatever it's actually doing. It should always maintain the position in which we are not just looking in the general direction where everyone is looking. Instead, we should always ask what is not being looked at, what is being left out, and what are some of the practices in art that has become more and more decomposing because it becomes a habit. And so with the tools in our hands, whether it's digital, computational, or traditional media art form, what is the room for innovation? So I think it's really about that. In the specific context for the denormal and also the manifesto project, I think there are too many people, trying to console us in Hong Kong, or they are very worried about us, or we are not certain what kind of articulation would be received by people outside Hong Kong. But to gain more understanding is very, very important. So I thought, whose understanding is not mine, but maybe a platform where everyone can put in something. So in that sense, I think we're doing something very basic, but this is so basic that is sustaining how we do not give up the right to speak and how we actually honor the art training that we all have. With denormal, very, very clear, we want to open up because the manifesto project is really for artists who are trained, but denormal is for everyone. In the process of the jury judgment, we struggle a lot because we tend very much to look for works that are artistically mature, but there was this struggle that the point of this platform is really to encourage everyone to say something with a tool, because the media is so ubiquitous, everyone can make images. We are very happy that in the works returned to us, there are lots of, well, I can't say a lot, but maybe at least half of the people who submitted the works, they are not necessary, they were not necessary, and they are not necessarily artists. So the political edge of this, of course, is to let people understand that art is far more than what we think. It should not be within the small elite circle. It should be shared. It should become weapons of articulation.
Thank you so much, Linda. Maybe I can jump in here. Can you turn off the microphone, please? Can you hear me? I don't think so. No, okay, you go.
Linda, it's mentioned that how you have kind of engaged with new audiences, also with people who are not artists. Michael, could you tell a little bit about your engagement with farmers into new territories and the work you have been doing in Hong Kong and also within the community, because your kind of work is engaging with kind of wide variety of groups in floating projects as well.
Yeah, so for those of you who are aware, the northern, I guess, rural, mountainous and also urban part of Hong Kong is called the New Territories, which nods to its, I guess, colonial origin, the name, like the British Empire, really enjoying calling everything new. So yeah, maybe a bit of context. In the 80s, around 40% of the vegetables that were consumed in Hong Kong were grown in Hong Kong, like 40%. But I think to this day, it's only 1.8% of the vegetables consumed are grown here. And this is really owing to government development projects, such as so-called new towns, again, the word new, but also developer hegemony, and I guess collaborative projects between the government and developers, and also infrastructure projects like the high-speed rail, which we see in Italy, in the Susa Valley, also in the UK with HS2. So these kind of like these common, I guess, expansion projects exist in a relatively small place like Hong Kong. And my research and also my personal interest is to understand how these farmers or villagers continue living, I guess, a sustainable life in terms of the food that they grow, but also having this urban and rural coexistence, potentially working in the city, but also growing their own vegetables organically and in their gardens. And so actually this relates back to, I guess, the floating project space and ways of organizing and also caring for each other. So I think maybe it's been around half a year. On Thursdays, I've been working with friends and farmers, and we're in, I guess, a so-called artist village building with around 8 floors of artist studios. And so we've been organizing like organic and local vegetable deliveries. And this has been happening like every week, and people come to floating projects, and we have quite a large fridge to store those vegetables for a day or two. And then with the farmers, they sometimes get excess produce, and they really, I guess, look to us for support and perhaps give us an extra crate of vegetables or fruits to try and share with the artist community. So floating projects kind of has expanded, I guess, to become part of like a local vegetable network and community, which I think is really important. And it also encourages me to literally visit artist studios, run by artists that I've never met before, and to kind of engage in new, I guess, conversations and encounters. And sometimes it's reciprocal. For example, there's a ceramicist who is now giving us organic waste to fertilize our balcony garden, like a different balcony garden in a different part of Hong Kong. So these new relations are forming through this, I guess, vegetable network. And this is really important for me. It means that I often come to floating projects and keep this close relationship with the farmers in the new territories.
Michael, it's basically that's what's happening here in Ars Electronica. Outside of this building, it's basically there are like a local vegetables available and people selling vegetables, and that's one of the kind of discussions in this Planet B. So this is a good point to wrap it up. It's amazing what kind of platform you have managed to create in the current situation in Hong Kong, which is challenging. So we have a deep appreciation for that. And upstairs you have a possibility to see the whole video. It's basically you only saw a couple of extracts of that. Thank you so much, Linda and Michael, for joining us today.
Our pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we move now to a really, not just a complete different country, but another continent, actually. We move to Africa, and we have an insight into a project before we have again the chance to speak to Dainson Sylvester Kayana.
This one goes to that woman that risk discrimination and sexual harassment because of that dress. It also goes to that gender that face humiliation because they choose to cross-dress. I thought to myself, if I get that address, the heart would be my target, but I wouldn't go there express. See, I'll take my time because I got feelings to express. With a sharp knife or a hot plate, hold that body I wish to caress. Having them cry and beg for mercy would be priceless. Begging in Christ for mercy would be useless. Chopping off their man's pride would pain their heart just to prove they ain't heartless. To teach others that being a man is not using your heart less. To prove to you that this gender is not powerless, that we only tend to use our power less. Yes, before this, I was just harmless. But now that I feel worthless, I'm everything else from careless to merciless. You would lose that sight, but still, that pepper spray button I will long press. See, I'm now limitless. I wish to leave you lifeless, for you created this monstrous that won't hesitate to pull that trigger, for I would rather be a murderess. My dress, my choice. They want to undress me is also my choice. Please stop. Don't you feel my noise? In my agony. How do you rejoice? My dress, my choice. They want to undress me is also my choice. Please stop. Don't you feel my noise? In my agony. How do you rejoice? Yo, this is Graham Suspect, Rainbow Ambassador Kenya, aka Mtetezi wa Raia, Citizens Defender. Out.
You just heard it's Graham Suspect, Rainbow Ambassador Kenya, and she could be sentenced for 14 years in prison. It's basically because in Kenya there's a law banning gay sex, and she's extremely courageous. It's LGBTQI activist who was an artist at risk resident in Barcelona and in Helsinki who returned back to Kenya. She has a group called Rainbow Talent Kenya. She's supporting LGBTQI community in Kenya, but it's just simply getting too dangerous, and we are, as we speak, trying to find a safe path for her and her partner to get out of Kenya. This is basically, it's the situation LGBTQI activists are facing in several African countries. It's including Uganda. Our next guest joining us online is a poet, is a novelist, children books author, Dr. Danson Kahuana. Danson, are you online?
Yes, Marita, I'm online. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks a lot for joining us. Danson is also a board member of PEN International and an outgoing president of PEN Uganda. We are really honored to have you here with us today to talk about the situation of artists and human rights defenders in the African continent, because you have a broader insight into that. And Danson is currently an artist at risk resident in Helsinki, but as always, he's an artist, he's a poet, and we will start, it's basically this session by hearing a couple of poems of Danson he wrote recently, and I think those poems have a strong language. I don't need to explain them to you. Danson, its floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much, Marita. I'm very privileged to be on this platform. I'm so happy to listen to Graham Suspect's performance, very powerful performance. And for me, who comes from East Africa, I know that what she's writing about is happening, and it's really sad that this kind of thing should happen. Myself, I don't know if you can see my picture. Yes, you will see that I have 3 teeth missing. And this is because I was attacked on 26 April 2022 over my poetry and scholarly writing that the regime deemed very critical. And the regime came in the guise of ordinary robbers, 3 men riding on 2 motorbikes. assaulted me. And of course, the regime said, well, we're not the ones. Those are robbers, you know. But we know there are many, there's a lot to indicate that it was the regime, but I won't go into that. So I wrote these 2 poems as part of the work I'm doing here in Helsinki, thanks to Marita and artists at risk. And the first poem is Lies. They tell us we are free to say whatever we want, for the Constitution guarantees the freedom of speech. But when we speak, they declare us enemies of the state and knock out our teeth to inject fear into our hearts. They tell us we are free to hold peaceful demonstrations, for the Constitution guarantees the freedom of assembly. But when we peacefully gather at the Freedom Square, they unleash the Anti-Riot Brigade and break our skulls. They tell us we are free to vote the candidates we desire, for the Constitution guarantees us the freedom to choose. But when we vote for the leaders we love and trust, the rulers terrorize us and scatter us into exile. They tell us we're the determiners of our destiny, for the Constitution bestows power unto us, the citizens. But when we denounce kleptocracy and tyranny, the armed forces hound us to death with impunity. That's one of the 2 poems. The second poem is titled On Loss, and it directly addresses the handicap you're seeing right now. The fact that I, who had a complete set of teeth, no longer have a complete set. I have 3 teeth missing. On loss. I lost 3 teeth, 3 lovely teeth, for speaking out my vision of a better governed country where corruption and sectarianism have no place. I lost 3 teeth, 3 lovely teeth, for dearly loving this much abused country and trying my best to save it from the plunderers. I lost 3 teeth, 3 lovely teeth, for asking my compatriots to listen to desperate views before they consider their own as foolproof truths. I lost 3 teeth, 3 lovely teeth, for fighting for my basic rights and freedoms as guaranteed by the Constitution of the Republic. Thank you, Marita.
Thank you, Danson, for those it's powerful and touching poems, which tell it's the best what has happened to you, but not only to you. It is also that has happened to many. It is people from opposition in Uganda. It is especially during the elections in 2021, and after that, it's basically journalists as being killed and protesters. And basically opposition rallies has been disrupted. Can you tell us a little bit what is the situation of opposition and human rights defenders in Uganda right now, and what kind of tools and strategies the government is using to silence artists and other oppositional figures?
Thank you, Marita. The first method they are using is, of course, the laws badly passed, laws that are not for the good of the citizens, but to entrench the leadership in power. So as we speak now, a young woman of 27 years was kidnapped from her home and kept in Gominkado for 10 days. And today she has been produced in court. No, yes, last evening she was produced in court. And what was her crime? To say that there's a general who died recently, and that general justified the killing of 54 protesters in 2021, as you have said. And he said the police can shoot as long as they ask you to stop protesting and you don't stop. But the freedom of assembly is guaranteed by the Constitution. So when this man died, almost the whole nation said, well, it serves him right He said the government the police could shoot anybody as they wish. Now death has taken him. And this is what the young girl said. The young girl said, well, I want more on you because you killed 54 people and you said it was okay. Now it is your turn. You have gone. And for this statement recorded on TikTok and shared on TikTok, she was now two problems here. Number one, she was kidnapped, not arrested formally by people with a warrant of arrest, but kidnapped and kept in Gomincado for 10 days. And then number two, after a lot of outcry from the people, she was produced in court. So a government that kidnaps its own citizens, can you imagine that? And this is not something new. More than 1,000 people have their whereabouts not known because they have been kidnapped. So we live in this fear of being kidnapped anytime. In fact, Bobby Wine, the head of the National Unity Platform opposition party, said, please don't move out of your houses beyond 7. Don't be alone. Ensure that you're with other people. In other words, people cannot even move in their own country without fearing that they will be kidnapped. So this is what they are doing. So number one, kidnaps. Number two, using the law, of course, to entrench the regime in power. But number three, indiscriminate killing. Anybody can kill you, and then they say, oh, it's ordinary robbers. Like in my case, they said we are ordinary robbers, but there were many indications to show that they were not ordinary robbers. So the situation in Uganda is very bad, it's very precarious, and the more we talk about it like I'm doing now, like Gramo Suspects is doing about Kenya, like other people are doing about Ukraine and everywhere, then people are able to hear about it and know what is happening.
You are a poet and a writer. Poppy Wine is a musician, so it's basically art is a powerful tool, and it seems also in Uganda and like in other African countries, like in Kenya, as we heard Gramo, that these governments are also worried about this is the power of artists. You are now, it's basically in Artist at Risk residency in Helsinki. It's basically writing your poetry and working on your art. Could you just, it's kind of describe that what can be done, from outside to support artists at risk in African countries? What are the concrete things which we can do?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Marita. Number one, people out here need to know what is happening on the continent so that when we cry out to you, you have the knowledge of what is happening. Because you know what is happening in Kenya, what is happening in Uganda, you are able to have Gramo Suspect and you're able to have me. But if we did not have knowledge of this, nothing would even ourselves would never know. So number one, to know what is happening in Africa so that you really follow how people are suffering. Number two, through people like me and Gramo Suspect and others, to let people know in Africa that these facilities are available for them to apply to in case their lives are under threat. But number three, Marita, as members of the European Union, please also think about the policy implications of the European Union as a bloc when it comes to Africa and other places under regimes of tyranny. There's always a link between what the European Union and the US government do and what happens back home. For example, if a person like Gramo Suspect is suffering a lot and other people like her are suffering a lot, but then the European Union does not issue a statement about that. For us in Uganda, we have had a president for 37 years, and he's a great ally of the European Union and a great ally of the US government. And we feel disappointed that a person like this is not held accountable by these powerful political and economic blocs like the European Union and the US government. I'll give you an example. Rwanda has terrible human rights records. There's even a poet who is missing. He's called Bahati. It is possible he has been killed. And then the UK government decides to send, comes up with a policy decision that all unprocessed immigrant asylum seekers will be taken to Rwanda. by doing something like that, it's as if you're saying that what Rwanda is doing to its own people and the dissident people is okay. And so organizations like Artists at Risk, like Us Electronica, and so on, you need to help us and engage these powerful political blocs like the European Union, like the US government, like the UK government, to hold these leaders accountable for their actions. It could be in terms of the loans they're asking for, the support, the bilateral support they're asking for, and so on. So that if they are held accountable, perhaps they will be better to their people. But when they do terrible things like what the president of Rwanda is doing, and then the UK government gives him this financial cushion, a lot of money to receive, but not just financial, but also political cushion, a lot of money for him to receive unprocessed immigrants, then these people are able to say, we can beat you up, we can knock out your teeth. And the people you'll cry out to, the European Union, the US, the UK, and so on, they will do nothing about it. So we also need to engage with the European Union, to engage with the US, to engage with the UK and other regional governments, so that these leaders can be held accountable at a diplomatic level, but also at an economic level, as they come begging for aid. Aid they use to buy more arms, aid they use to buy tear gas, aid they use to suppress the rights of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Danson, and thanks for it's bring up this Rwandan issue. It's not only UK, it's Denmark is also planning this. And it's really right to kind of point fingers on what EU countries and EU member countries are doing. And we really have to stop these things happening in our own territory and take a responsibility and action for that. Unfortunately, our time is limited. Thanks a lot, it's Danson, for joining us. Thank you for your powerful poetry. Thank you, Kramos Aspect, it's Rainbow Ambassador Kenya, for doing what you are doing. Impacting Kenya, our deepest appreciation. You are risking your life every day bravely, and I will wrap this up. Also reminding, and in Kenya, check out hashtag justice for Sheila, a non-binary lesbian person was just murdered. It happens every year, and those murders usually remain uninvestigated. We have to, it's basically keep the memories of these people alive. We have to call their names. They can't be forgotten. They are the frontline fighters. Thanks a lot again, Danson, for joining us, and we will move on to our next session.
Thank you. Thank you, Marita, for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danson.
It's getting hard, really. We're moving forward. We're moving to another country that, especially last year in summer, just before the festival, was everywhere in the news. We move forward to Afghanistan, to an artist. Her name is Sarah Nabil, and she's also an artist in one of the artist residencies of an artist at risk.
She works. She works with us, and she has advised us on the case of Afghanistan. But Sarah Nabil is an amazing artist and an activist, as you say.
We'll have a video from her, a video work, and then we have the chance to also speak to her.
Uh, Welcome, it's Sarah Nabil. We are really honored to have you with us here today online. Sarah is an artist and an activist who is currently based in Germany. She studies in the University of Art and Design in Offenbach. But before that, she studied political science in Kabul in the beginning of 2013. And she also studied arts in Kabul. And Sarah is also founding member of Shamama Gallery, the first art gallery founded by a group of 4 women, which was established in 2014 in Afghanistan. She has been the vice president of the Afghan Women Coordination Nation Association in Afghanistan. And she recently established an organization for like-minded women. It's in Europe. Sarah, we are really happy that you are online with us. We started this session with your last performance in Kunsthalle Mannheim. It's in August. Can you tell us shortly, it's basically, what is your statement with this very powerful act you did in August?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here today about this recent performance that I did in Kunsthalle Mannheim. I have to also say it's about 15 minutes performance, and I just cut about 2 minutes here to show because we don't have much time. And the name of this artwork is Bodies in War, My Hair is Free, and it's talking about how the female body in Afghanistan, so especially after they took power, since the Taliban took the power, how the female body become a venue for a political ideology and also cultural conflicts and also power struggles in Afghanistan. And I did it was a protest, an artistic protest from my side to have, it was by cutting my hair, I stand against all these rule and regulation and laws that's against the women, and they are making women so limited. And mostly it's coming from religion, from the patriarchy, and also from governments. This was about, the performance is talking about these issues.
Sarah, that you started to express yourself through your art already when you were young. You were 13 or 14. Can you tell us that is how you found the language of art and what it meant to you back in Afghanistan?
Yeah. I have to say, as I start art, it was not easy on that time as well. I start art on 2006 in Center for Contemporary Arts of Afghanistan. First time in Afghanistan. It was the first contemporary art center in Afghanistan. And I started with age of 14. And because the life and the experience of my life, so as a child, that I brought my childhood under the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. And I always try to find a way to express myself and also to have, influence also on the people. And I choose art, and luckily I find this center and I start from there, so my artistic works, and then I start also with my social and political activities.
We are now in Ars Electronica Festival. I think it's good to talk a little bit more about its contemporary arts in Afghanistan, which was founded by Rahwa Omazad, and it also had a sibling organization, Women's Art Center. Could you tell us a little bit about Women's Art Center and its relevance in Afghanistan at the time?
I have to say, the Center for Contemporary Arts of Afghanistan established in 2004, and then we established in 2006 this Women Art Center in Afghanistan, and this was the only Women Art Center in Afghanistan, which through art, they would like to empower the woman in Afghanistan. And also, I have to say, art is a section that's always, there is much, in last 20 years in Afghanistan, there was lots of development happen in Afghanistan in every section, but not in art. But at least we had a little bit development, and especially this center played a really good role in this section, especially for women. And in 2006, they started, and we had lots of exhibition. We trained lots of, the center trained lots of women's, the basic of art, and also lots of artists, I have to say. So this was the only center, and lots of artists, those who are right now, even though international, how to say, working, they come from this center, and they played a really good role on till, I have to say, till 21, because since the Taliban took the power, so it's so hard for me, and it's make me so sad that I'm saying that art scenes right now died in Afghanistan, because there isn't any art scene in Afghanistan. All artists, those who did art till right now, they couldn't do it anymore, because the Taliban they are against art and music, and for them as though art is taboo. And we saw what they did just in 1 year since they took the power till now. They completely, I think you know already, and you got also from the media what they did, but I can also tell a little bit more after. I'm not sure how much time we have.
No, Sarah, go ahead. I think it's good to kind of describe what is the situation for artists in Afghanistan. It's right now, because just from point of view is the organization I work for, Artists at Risk. We still have 450 professional artists in Afghanistan, 2,000 people altogether. And now, after 1 year, for example, working for getting visas for artists to come to Germany, we are slowly receiving few artists. France was the only country which kind of it's rapidly actually started to host artists at risk, journalists, it's this other activists. We are now in Austria. I don't know if there are any artists at risk being hosted in Austria. So Sarah, I think it's really relevant to talk about it, that what is the situation of artists who are still in Afghanistan, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yeah, so I have to say, everyone right now living under the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, they are bringing their every second of life under the big fear, and especially those who actively work in last 20 years in Afghanistan. So especially activists and artists more, because we saw what they did. And every day they have this fear that maybe the Taliban going to arrest them. And we had there was some artists, because of their artistic activities, the Taliban arrest them and they put them on the jail. And still, so the other artists, they just destroyed their artworks by themselves, because it was, it was not secure for them to keep their artwork in house. And right now it's really the situation, but still we have lots of, I have to say, more than hundreds of artists still there in Afghanistan, and still they didn't got any help. And they are looking for help, that they should evacuate it from Afghanistan. And I have to say, doing art under the Taliban regime, that they don't believe in art, and art is for them taboo. There isn't any place for them. They should be evacuated. And what they need, this is I'm not sure how many artists are already hosted by Austria government, but in Germany, there is it goes a little bit good. I have to say that they hosted lots of artists right now, but still it's lots of people still they're looking for help in Afghanistan, and they need immediately help, that they should evacuate it, because there isn't any place, or that there isn't any space for doing or practicing art in Afghanistan under the Taliban regime.
Yeah, I think it's also it's the Department of Fine Arts. It's closed down. The instruments were destroyed in the music department, yes. And it's kind of clear that artists are being silenced, and for now they need visas, they need support, they need it's basically pathway to get out, because as you say, they can't practice out, and we also have to remember that there are artists who have been murdered, like Fawad Amrabi, the famous folk singer, the comedian Nasar Mohammad. I mean, the situation is really alarming. Sarah, we unfortunately had to kind of wrap up. It's very soon, that if you can send a message to Ars Electronica community and art community, how they can support Afghan artists at risk, it's please, let's wrap it up by doing that.
First of all, I have to say that please don't forget Afghanistan at all. And the second, the art on artists, because the art scene is completely died in Afghanistan, and it's so sad. We shouldn't let it will be continue. And the artists in Afghanistan, they really immediately need help. And I think the humanitarian visa would be a good option for them that they should get, and they should come out from Afghanistan and they can continue their work outside of Afghanistan, at least right now. And don't forget Afghan women, so especially artists or the Afghan artists.
We will make everything that we can to share your messages, to share your work. So please let us know also outside of this round of how we can support. Thank you very much.
Yes,
thank you for
well.
sharing
Thank
your
you so
message with us, Sarah.
Thanks a lot, Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
We actually have now 2 guests that are going to join us on stage, and they maybe don't primarily consider themselves as artists. However, they did receive a prize in the Prias Electronica in the digital community category. And please, dear Ola, dear Fadwa, join us on stage. It's really wonderful to see you here. Just take a seat, please, with us, wherever you feel comfortable. And thank you so much for making the long trip, this time from Berlin to Linz, but you had a lot of travel beforehand. Please just take a microphone. Marita, may I hand over the word?
First of all, congratulations for Digital Communities Prize. We are really honored that you are here in person with us today. It is as a co-founder of Families for Freedom, Fatwa Mahmoud. And thank you for joining us as a translator, Ola Suleiman. It's kind of, it's great that both of you are here to discuss what Families for Freedom are doing. It's basically, Fatwa, could you tell us that what was the reason for you for starting Families for Freedom, that you also have a personal story as a Syrian woman? It's basically that we know, I read an interview with you, that it's your husband and your son has gone missing in Syria, which must be unimaginably, it's painful experience, and they are still missing. We would be really honored if you could share your story and the motivation for starting Families for Freedom in Germany.
أولاً كتير شكراً للاستضافة وشكراً للاهتمام. أنا بدي أقول إنه إلى حد ما سعيدة بوجودي هون، رغم إنه أنا ماني سعيدة يعني. بهذا الشهر بكمل ابني وزوجي 10 سنوات وهن مختفيين ومعتقلين بالسجن بسوريا ب20/9/2012. اعتقلوا ولحد الآن أنا ما بعرف عنهم أي معلومة. أنا اسمي فدوى محمود ومن حركة عائلات من أجل الحرية. مثل ما حضرتك حكيتي أنا من السيدات الأوائل اللي اشتغلت على تأسيس حركة عائلات من أجل الحرية.
Be with you here, although happiness is not a common thing in my life. I have been a co-founder of Families for Freedom. Yes, that's true. My son and my husband disappeared in Syria since 2012, and until now, 10 years. I have in the end of September they will complete their 10 years of disappearance, and I don't know any information about them.
تأسست الحركة بسنة 2017. كنا 5 سيدات. نحن قلنا أحبابنا أن معتقلين ومختفيين قسرا. هاي الحركة تشكلت لأنه نحن كأهالي معتقلين وزويهم يعني يعني أنا الأم والزوجة، صديقتي الأخت، صديقتي الثانية الأب مختفي. فنحن مجموعة من السيدات أولادنا مختفيين من بداية الحراك. بس بدي بس أقول شغلة أو أضيف معلومة. هيدا الاعتقال مش جديد بسوريا أو الإخفاء القسري بسوريا، هو من زمان موجود بسوريا، يعني قبل 2011. يعني أنا مثلا اعتقلت أيضا بالتسعين لمدة سنتين. زوجي الدكتور عبد العزيز الخير اعتقل لمدة 14 سنة. فهذا النهج اللي بسوريا ليس بجديد.
So I'm one of 5 ladies who established the Families for Freedom movement in 2017. We are simply just women who lost their loved ones, whether I lost my husband and my son, my friend lost her brother, the other members may lost their fathers, or we are all families that lost someone that was disappeared in Syria. And I would like to say that that disappearance in Syria forced disappearance in Syria is not a new thing. It has been ongoing since the 90s. Fadwa herself was arrested for or disappeared for 2 years in the 90s. Her husband, who is currently has been disappeared for 10 years, was also disappeared for 14 years before, and it has been ongoing since then and until now.
بدي أقول إنه حركة العائلات يلي هي كلياتها بتتميز بإنه حركة نسوية، هي متشكلة من سيدات فقط. كنا بالبداية 5 لكن هلأ بلشنا نصير شي 200 أو أكثر من 270 عائلة انضمت للحركة، ويلي هي نحن حريصين دائما وأبدا لنكون صوت الناس يلي ما بتقدر ترفع صوتها، وخاصة بسوريا، لأنه لحد الآن اليوم اللي نحن هلأ قاعدين فيه ممكن يكون في اعتقال بسوريا. حتى العائلات ما بتقدر تذكر إنه والله عندها ابن أو عندها أخ أو زوج أو أي حدا من عائلتها معتقل، لأنه ممكن تتعرض أيضا للاعتقال.
I would like to just say that we are in Families for Freedom. We are all women movement. We are woman-led and we are all women. And we started with 5 women, but we are now more than 270 women all around the world. And we think our main task is to elevate the voices of our families, but also the families inside Syria who are unable to speak, because until now arrests and detention in Syria is ongoing, and a family simply can face detention if they even spoke about having detained their brothers or sisters and so on. So because they cannot speak, we try to be their voices.
ومن نشاطات الحركة أو من قوة، خليني أعبر عن إنه أقول قوة الحركة بأنه نحن أصحاب القضية. يعني أي حدا آخر بيحكي بقضية المعتقلين ممكن يحكيها كقضية عادية، مثل كأنه ملف سياسي ولا ملف تفاوضي، ولا بينما نحن كعائلات كأهالي هي معنيين فيها بالدرجة الأولى. يعني أنا لأفترض أنا ابني ولا زوجي ما بقدر إنساهم ولا للحظة ولا لثانية، فمشان هيك لازم ضل أذكر بهي القضية اللي هي قضية الاعتقال والإخفاء القسري. إضافة بس بدي نوه لشغلة أيضا، إنه المعتقلين اللي بسوريا هن ما هم مجرمين، ما عملوا ارتكابات جرمية، هن بس لمخالفتهم رأي النظام أو لمطالبتهم بالحرية والكرامة بسوريا. فهي المسألة يلي نحن كتير حريصين لأنه نفهم العالم بأنه نحن أحبائنا وأولادنا ما نن مجرمين، ما ارتكبوا جرائم. يمكن في حدا بيقول أنه إذا حدا اعتقل أو سجن بسوريا معناها هو مجرم. لا، عندنا بسوريا مجرد مخالفتك لرأي النظام أو لمطالبتك بحريتك وبكرامتك، تعيشي بكرامة وبحرية، ممكن تعتقلي. فهذا النهج اللي ينتهج به داخل النظام بسوريا.
I would like to say that one of our strengths as a movement is that the fact that we are the families of those that are disappeared. It's our personal causes, it's our everyday life. Some other people or parties may speak about detention in Syria, but they would speak of it as a political matter or as a negotiation card or something like that. But for us, it's different. It's our main cause, it's our everyday life. She wanted to say that one thing maybe that is not apparent to everybody is that people who are imprisoned in Syria, they haven't done anything wrong or anything illegal. They simply asked for more freedoms, or they simply said something that the regime in Syria wouldn't agree on. It's a dictatorship, so it's understandable that people may think that people in prison have done something illegal, but that's not the case. The case is that simply by saying no or saying something different, you are subjected to detention in Syria. That's the systematic way the regime has been dealing with opposition since the 90s.
It's Families for Freedom has been working with 4 other organizations, and there's something called fate detection mechanism, which has been now, it's being discussed in the level of UN, which it's kind of result of your tireless and amazing work you have been doing. Could you tell us more about this fate detection mechanism, why you created it, and what's the purpose of it, and what could it mean concretely if it would be implied?
نتيجة هذا نحن كلياتنا دائما بنؤمن بأنه العمل الجماعي ممكن يعطي فائدة أكبر. فمشان هيك نحن من حوالي 2 أو 3 سنوات بالضبط عملنا اجتمعنا 5 روابط ضحايا، هن أهالي وعائلات من الضحايا. هي 5 روابط، هي عائلات من أجل الحرية، مسار، عائلات قيصر، ورابطة صيدنايا. نحن ال5 روابط شكلنا مثل خارطة طريق سميناها ميثاق الحقيقة والعدالة، لأنه في مسألة كنا دائما نتواجه فيها ونحن عم نحكي على قضية الاعتقال، أنه يستضيفونا ويسألونا أنه قضيتكم كتير صعبة وكتير شائكة، شو ممكن نعمل معاكم؟ فنحن مثل رسمنا خارطة طريق، أنه أي حدا أنتم بدكم تساعدونا تفضلوا، في عنا خارطة طريق لأنه تعملوا على أساسها. من هي خارطة الطريق طلع منها كمان في أهداف بعيدة المدى وقريبة المدى. قريبة المدى منها آلية اسمها كشف المصير. كشف المصير هي آلية حتى نعرف وين أحبابنا، وين أولادنا، وين الناس اللي مختفيين واللي معتقلين، لأنه العدد اللي معتقلين والمخفيين قسرا أعداد هائلة جدا جدا. فهل نحن بحاجة لنعرف إذا موجودين على قيد الحياة أم لا؟ هاي الآلية اللي نحن عم نشتغل عليها. بالبداية خلت أطول عليك. شكرا.
So just to say what is the mechanism and how it came to, the idea came to us. So we are 5 victim groups and families of disappeared. She mentioned the groups, and they are the Association of the Disappeared and Detainees in Sednaya. They are Families for Freedom, and they are Masar, families of people disappeared by ISIS. And there's the Association of families of who found their loved ones in the Caesar pictures, and also there's the Ta'afi, which is survivors of detention. So these 5 groups would join together, and they their main challenge, they joined together 3 years ago, and their main challenge was that when they asked for help from governments and from policymakers, the question they faced was, your cause is very tricky, it's very complicated. How can we, what do you want, how can we solve it? So they came up with the Charter of Truth and Justice, and that's, they describe it as a roadmap to show whoever wants to solve that case how to go around doing that step by step. They have near future priorities, and they have priorities for the further we go, and so on. And the mechanism was the first priority for them to uncover the fate of people who are forcibly disappeared in Syria, because simply put, there are a huge number of people that are forcibly disappeared in Syria that no one knows anything about them.
بعد ما حكينا عن هاي الآلية وشفنا مدى أهميتها، اشتغلنا عليها وعملنا عليها دراسة. يعني إجا في خبير عملنا دراسة عليها، وهي الدراسة رفعت للأمم المتحدة ومشكورة. وبودي فعلا وجه شكر للمفوضية السامية لحقوق الإنسان، لأنه كتير كانت السند لنا بهذا المشوار. ومشان تباركوا لي كمان من ب30 هذا الشهر طلعت الدراسة عن الآلية من الأمم المتحدة، ولكن حقيقة لسه بعد مشوارنا طويل بالنسبة للآلية.
Okay. So after we determined that our first priority is to uncover the fate of detainees and forcibly disappeared, we decided that we hired an expert who made a study, and the study concluded that we need a new mechanism because the current bodies are not sufficient. We need a new mechanism to establish that goal. And so we took this study and then we passed it to the UN, and based on that, then they asked for a study to determine if such a mechanism is necessary. And I'm very glad to tell you that recently they have issued a report saying that such a mechanism is necessary to uncover the fate of the disappeared in Syria. And but this is only a first step, and we have so many further steps to go.
Also, Families for Freedom and Fauda, you are very creative in your strategies to make your aims visible, that you organize this very impressive event with 300 landline phones in Bebelplatz Square in Berlin. And I also just heard that you and your group has also written a documentary play which is being staged in Napoli. And since we are in the artistic context, we would like to kind of course, engage artists and artistic communities to the struggle and what you are doing. So could you kind of think together with us that how artists could support your group and these 4 other organizations you are working with? Yes.
فهلا نحن بسياق فني، فهل فينا نفكر مع بعض كيف الفنانين او المجتمع الفني بيقدر يدعمكم ويقدر يساعدكم او تقدروا تشتغلوا مع بعض.
Thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up for now, but you're staying here some more days, right? Until tomorrow. Yeah. So the project is also presented as a video and a print where you have the demands, the request to the politicians, also to the institutions of how they can help. So please visit them in the exhibition space, talk to them. Hopefully maybe also you can help.
Engage. It says by artistic means. She's also an artist, a playwright. You see that these activists are using creative strategies, and it's better to work together with these creative strategies.
Exactly.
So I think that's why we are here
so
today.
Please reach out. Yes, we're here.
Reach out.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We actually now have a short film about artists for freedom, families for freedom, especially linked to Berlin, and please have a look.
Standing here
go. I need something, give me something wonderful. And I believe.
بدنا المعتقلين، بدي أخي، بدي كل معتقلين سوريا المغيبين، بدنا حقنا منكم، بدنا نحاسبكم، بدنا عدالة وحرية. ما رح نسكت لحتى نوصل للعدالة والحرية، حرية المعتقلين وكشف مصيرهم ومحاسبتكم بالمحاكم الدولية.
You can't take me down, you can't break me down, you can't take me down, you can't take me down, you can't break me down, you can't take me down. Love and hate, how much more are we supposed to tolerate? Can't you see we're more than just my mistakes? Sometimes I get the feeling, want to hesitate. I believe she won't take me somewhere I'm not supposed to be. You can't steal the things that God has given me. No more pain.
We'll stay. It's in Syria. It's basically one of the State of Artist Award winners is exiled Syrian rapper Amir Almuarri. Amir is not, unfortunately, with us here today because he's in a refugee camp in Turkey. He might be detained to Syria, which can be and is life-threatening for him. His situation is very, it's difficult, like for many others like him who are in the same position. We will watch his song On All Fronts, which shows how fearless fighter Amir is, that he is actually taking aim at all warring fractions in Syria. It's basically, he's not taking sides, but kind of it is criticizing, as you see from his lyrics. And of course, that's one of the reasons Amir had to leave from Syria to Turkey. And as we know, the situation it is for Syrian people in Turkey is not easy. Many of them are paperless. Many of them are being detained back to Syria, which is life-threatening. And we heard just what can happen when you are detained back to Syria. I think we don't need more words about that. So let's watch Amir's video and song, and please spread it around. Amir needs support.
Before we watch the video, we want to thank you all for coming here, for watching, and for spreading the word, as Marita said already. From yesterday's session, we unfortunately couldn't show one of the award winners' video, and it was the performance by Daria Pugacheva, I Will Close the Sky. So after Amir's video, after Amir's song, we will also watch her performance. Thank you again. Tomorrow we will continue the discussion with some representatives of the Austrian Federal Ministry to talk about the power of cultural diplomacy and also what urgent matter need to be addressed. So join us tomorrow, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you also from my behalf for the audience and all the speakers and artists at risk who joined us today.
Now we have a look at the video.
هون معقل اتفاقيات الروسي، فحدد انتمائك بين القاعدة أو الحكم المجوسي، لأنه صواريخهم ما بتصيبك لو كنت بصفهم. روح شوف الشعب بعد نتائج مؤتمر سوتشي. غيرنا بينطمر بالعملة ونحن اللي بنبتلى بنبتلى فاندفنا بالليالي. لما طلبنا العلا ما رح ينفع التظاهر. لو الفكر محجر زدت المقرر. الجامعة انختمت بالشمع الأحمر. عمين بدي ازعل على رفيقي يلي استشهد ولا ع منظر رفيقي بنعش امه عم يتنهد. عمين عهالمشهد لما الدم بيمتزج بالدفتر والاشلاء عم تتعدد لسه بيحكوا شمال محرر. ازعل عن مستقبل الدراسي ولا 2000 طالب انطرتوا من الكراسي. ولا ازعل على استاذي اللي راح افقده واللي وعدني ما رح نيأس. فمين بدي واسي؟ انتو مين؟ ضل منافق ما حكى بالدين. هذا بيدعي الخلافة وهذا بيفتي عن يقين. هالسياسة ساخرة نقابك اخلعوا بأرضي هاي البلد طاهرة. هون معقل الاتفاقيات الروسي فحدد انتمائك بين القاعدة أو الحكم المجوسي. لأنه صواريخهم ما بتصيبك لو كنت بصفهم. روح شوف الشعب بعد نتائج مؤتمر سوشي. تصنع ايديولوجي تدمير البنى التحتية. فالموازنة بين الألف والقاف ما رح تمحي العنصرية. أو بين إخوان أحزاب أو مذاهب شيوعية. ولو بتفصل أي شيء عن الدين بيتهموك بعلمانية. إلا لو كنت أجنبي الجنسية اسمك متطرف. سوق سودا وتبييض الأموال وتجار عملة وألف مصرف. كلهم سلف ودين مثل السلف بالدين. استلموا الميادين بعفرين عملوا مناطق عازلة. كله بيشهد عليك إعلاميين منظمات خارجية وفصائل متخاذلة. ما تحاول تزرع لتحصد مستقبل لأنك عايش بأراضي قاحلة. عنده ضمير يجيب لك شاهدين زور شافوك عم تسرق ويلزقك بتهمة باطلة. كل واحد هون راس سلاح وبيت وسيارة وسفر فاخرة وخطابات ساخرة وعملة بادرة لتنهش الأيادي العاملة. وشو ما سمعت أو شفت لازم تعمل حالك متت حتى ما تقول اندمت إنك اكشفت مخططات فاشلة. غيرنا بينطمر بالعملة ونحن اللي بنبتلى فاندفنا بالليالي. لما طلبنا العلا ما رح ينفع التظاهر. لو الفكر محجر زدت المقرر. الجامعة انختمت بالشمع الأحمر. عمين بدي ازعل على رفيقي يلي استشهد ولا ع منظر رفيقي بنعش امه عم يتنهد. عمين عهالمشهد لما الدم بيمتزج بالدفتر والاشلاء عم تتعدد لسه بيحكوا. قال موسيقى الراب فاضحة نادوا المكافحة. لازم نسيطر على الفساد. اعتقلوا هيسكي لانه عم يحكي عالسياسات. ومنعوا كل حفلات جون فلود وديرتي مولي بالبلاد. خلينا نوجه رابرز ما تحكي بسمعة القواد. انشروا بالاعلام انه فن داعم للارهاب. التصريح بوتين كم رابر ورا القضبان وكم فيك تسمى فنان. ضجوا بوسائل الاعلام قد ما فيكن. كبسوا انفاس الشعوب. انظمة بتتغذى على الحروب والدم. كل ما عندهم ارسال وفود استطلاع. وتاني يوم بينقصف مخيم. سكروا مداخل التعليم. جيبوا مراقبين لانه باب الرزق عم يتسكر. يا بتدفعوا ترخيص يا بنعتقل كادر التدريس. يا اما ادرسوا عنا ضمن نهج ومقاييس وتكرموا منوصلكن بباص اخضر. فلا تتحذر اي جهة بتفوز او اي فتوى بتجوز. نقط تركيا او روس وسع شظايا بالروس. بدك دليل ملموس بس اعلامك مبرمج. روبوتات موجهة بتشرب قطن مهدرج. جيب لي واحد فيهن عنده القدرة ينشر تفكيك لشي قائد متوج. فأكرم النفوس ذلت. قالوا ابني أمر عسكري وقف القصف. النقاط التركية دخلت.
вербовая дощечка, дощечка, по ній ходить насточка, насточка. На все поле леліє, леліє. Звідки милий приїде, приїде. Звідки милий приїде, приїде. Подарунки привезе, привезе. Червоні чоботи, чоботи. До ліпшої роботи, роботи. А у Косові роблене, роблене. А у Львові ношене, ношене. Де насточка бувала, бувала, там діброва палала, палала. І дівки гасити, гасити, цебром воду носити, носити. Скільки в цебриці водиці, водиці, стільки в дівках правдиці, правдиці. Скільки в решеті водиці, водиці, стільки в хлопцях правдиці, правдиці. Вербовая дощечка, дощечка, по ній ходить насточка, насточка.